They say blood is thicker than water, but in my family, blood was just the ink they used to forge my father's signature and steal everything he left for me. Imagine flying 10 hours for Christmas, hoping for a hug, only to be handed a chore list before your suitcase even hits the floor. No welcome home. No, we missed you. Just go get the groceries and watch the kids. I was the daughter they used, the sister they robbed. But today I am the landlord they fear. I didn't just get mad, I got even. I bought the very roof over their heads, and I gave them exactly 24 hours to pack their lies and get out. You're about to see how a good daughter became their worst nightmare. Before I tell you the moment the locks changed, I have to ask, have you ever been the fixer in your family? The one who does everything right, only to be treated like an outsider? If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from the people who were supposed to love you most, hit that like button right now. Let's show the algorithm that we stand for justice. And if you love stories where the underdog finally wins, subscribe to Twisted Tales Stories. We expose the secrets families try to hide. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal the legal loophole I used to trap them. I'll show you the exact moment my mother realized the babysitter was now her boss. And trust me, the look on her face when I handed her that eviction notice, it's a scene you'll want to share with anyone who's ever been underestimated. I know how the headline sounds. Woman evicts parents in 24 hours. It sounds cold. It sounds like a tabloid story you'd click at 2 a.m. But I'm not here to lie to you. I didn't use a tow truck or break the locks in the middle of the night. What I did was legal, surgical, and coldly necessary. I'm going to tell you exactly how it unfolded. I'll be honest about where I pushed them and where they pushed me first. But to understand the ending, we have to go back to that door. 10 hours on a plane, coffee that tasted like regret, and a family that saw a bank account instead of a daughter. This is the story of how my inheritance was stolen and how I bought it back. Let's begin. My family stole my inheritance, so I bought their house and gave them 24 hours to leave. I know how that sounds. It reads like a headline you'd click at 2 a.m. and then feel a little guilty about laughing at. Full stop. That's a dramatic way to sell a story. I didn't drag anyone out in the middle of the night. I didn't break locks or call a tow truck to make a spectacle. What I did was legal, careful, and coldly necessary. I'll tell you exactly how it unfolded, and I'll be clear when I'm tightening this story to match the headline. But first, the door. I flew 10 hours for Christmas. The plain coffee tasted like regret and sleeping pills. I stepped through my parents' front door, and instead of hugs and a tray of something flaky from the oven, I was handed a schedule, a babysitting roster inked on a Post-it. Mia's piano recital was at 3. Logan's pediatrician appointment the next morning. Can you pick up the groceries? We're short. My suitcase barely hit the hallway tile before Mom was apologizing for Dad's back, again. And Dad was sighing as if I had appeared to fix their lives. You think you know your family? You think you're going home? I learned the difference between expectation and employment that week. My family didn't just ask, they assumed, and they did it with a quiet confidence that said, Claire will say yes because she always has. The pattern wasn't new. It was a slow burn disguised as kindness. Just this once became the family chorus. It was a $2,500 wire for car repairs in March 2019 when Jason forgot his own account password. It was $7,000 toward community college tuition the summer after he decided night classes would be fine for a while. It was $20,000 paid against the mortgage in increments. Little payments in odd months, always on my card or my account, always with a text that read like an apology and an expectation. We'll pay you back next month. Next month never arrived. I kept track because I had to. It started as a way of comforting myself. Receipts, a screenshot here, a note on my phone there, but it turned into survival. By the time I opened a spreadsheet in January 2022, 3 years of my just this once favors added up to more than $60,000. I highlighted each row like a breadcrumb trail that led to a house I had always thought belonged to the people who raised me. I'll tell you the numbers because that's where the disbelief starts. People shrug when you say, I helped out a lot. They don't understand what a lot looks like in black and white. Seeing $2,500, $1,200, $4,600, $9,800 listed under transfers with dates and reference notes, car repair, tuition, mortgage payment. It's a different kind of truth. It's not moralizing, it's arithmetic. And arithmetic is hard to argue with. There was one line that made my stomach drop. July 14th, 2021, mortgage payment, co-borrower notification. I had ignored the first email because it was buried under a dozen other things. It was an automated message from the lender informing me that my name was attached as a co-borrower on the Miller address mortgage. I thought it was a mistake. I asked Mom about it at dinner. Oh, that? Gary sorted it when you were out of the country. He said it would help your credit. He didn't ask me. He added me. That single line changed everything. A co-borrower isn't kindness. It isn't even loosely related to being a backup credit card. It's a legal tie. If payments stopped, my credit could be dinged. If a refinance happened without my knowledge, my name was entangled. I felt that word, co-borrower, like a noose I hadn't seen until it was looped around my neck. So I did what my scatterbrained, people-pleasing brain never would have done on its own. I prepared. I'm not reckless. I think in lists. I went to someone who knows the rules. My financial advisor was practical to the point of bluntness. You need documentation, 3 years of statements, bank transfers, texts, anything tied to those payments. Don't go in angry, go in organized. That protects you. He said it like a mantra. Evidence is empowerment. I printed everything. I redacted sensitive numbers because I don't need strangers on the internet reading full account numbers. But I left the meat, dates, amounts, notes, screenshots of the co-borrower email. I made a 2-page timeline and a spreadsheet that added the transfers in neat columns. $2,500, $1,200, $4,600, $20,000. The total, $62,740, sat at the bottom in bold. I underlined the word total twice because if you're going to change a family's narrative, you better make the math unmistakable. I also drafted a simple agreement. Nothing legalistic, just a plain English acknowledgement that documented the transfers and asked for clarity, whether these were gifts, loans, or something else. The advisor told me to keep it simple and to avoid legal threats in the language. We want to invite clarity, not create a courtroom, he said. He joined the meeting via a brief video call, not to be dramatic, but to explain how co-borrower status could affect me and to reinforce that this was about disentangling, not revenge. Banks have policies, he told us, and they vary. In your case, the bank may require one party to qualify a loan if a name is removed. That's a process, not a bullet you fire blind. Consult a lawyer if you're moving toward a formal separation of obligations. That qualifier sat between us like a polite caution flag. I rehearsed my entry. I told myself, steady voice, crisp documents, no theatrics. The kitchen table was scarred from years of school projects and birthday cakes. It smelled faintly of orange detergent and whatever stew had been simmered earlier. My family gathered around with that curious mix of expectation and entitlement. Dad, Gary, wore his habitual expression, which could be read as concern or accusation depending on the angle. Jason shuffled his feet. Mom's eyes were wet in a way that said sorry and also, disturbingly, defensive. I placed the folder on the table like a small landing strip. I'm not here to hurt anyone, I said, and I meant it. I also didn't want to be the family's financial ambulance forever. I started with the obvious. The flights, the missed workdays, the babysitting schedule they handed me when I arrived. I painted the scene of a daughter who wanted to be present for her family and who paid the price over years of micro-expectations. Then I slid the spreadsheet across the wood. When people see numbers on paper, something happens. They can't argue tone or motive as easily. They can argue details, but they can't deny the trace. Mom touched the edge of the paper like she was afraid it might crumble. Jason laughed a little, a nervous sound. Dad squinted and then leaned back. I read out 3 entries slowly. June 2019, $4,600. Contributed to mortgage via my account. March 2020, $2,500. Car repairs. September 2021, $7,000. Tuition payment. The first audible sound after that list was Mom's breath. We said we'd pay you back, she said. We always meant to. Words that are promises and words that are debts live on different ledgers. The pictures of the transactions told a different story. A wire transfer from my account to a local credit union, the memo, for the house. Another transfer marked Jason a school. A screenshot of a text from Dad 3 months earlier. Can you front this? I'll repay. The texts are those tiny social contracts that people treat like currency but not like legal tender. Then I played the co-borrower email aloud. Notification: your name has been added as co-borrower. Mom's mouth opened and closed. Gary said he handled it. Dad's eyes flicked to me, like I'd somehow benefited. You knew? I asked Jason. He shrugged. I thought it was for credit building. You said that used to be a thing. There it was, the casual shrug that had been the family ethos. Just take care of it. Just this once. We'll pay you back. I kept my voice measured. I walked them through what the advisor had said on the call, letting the advisor's on-screen voice punctuate my sentences with straightforward facts. Co-borrower status could affect credit, and removing a name can be a process involving qualification. I said, I want to be clear. I am not trying to be cruel. I want clarity. I need to know what these transfers were. Were they gifts? Loans? I need a plan to disentangle my finances from this house. The room filled with a silence that was more than absence of sound. It was the sound of assumptions colliding with accountability. Dad's response was the expected pivot, denial wrapped in indignation. You're making us sound like thieves, he said. We're family. There's a phrase families use when being challenged. We're family. It's meant to end conversation, to make any boundary seem like betrayal. You asked me to be your safety net, I said. You put me on the hook as a co-borrower without asking. That's not family, that's paperwork. Short sentences, clear facts. I could feel my pulse under my tongue, but my voice remained steady. That steadiness is not virtue, it's a strategy. Anger is a gas. You can combust or you can burn a measured path and keep your credit intact. Dad raised his voice. He accused me of making a spectacle. He said, we were just trying to help. He said a few things meant to sting, to imply ingratitude. I didn't let him set the tempo. I slid the canceled reservation confirmation across the table, the winter resort package I'd booked for all of us last November, charged to my card because I'd thought it would be a nice surprise. When the trip was canceled at the last minute by Mom's health excuse, they never once suggested reimbursing me. The reservation was refunded 3 months later. Into their account, not mine. The refund email, with the transaction marked for deposit into Gary Miller's checking, sat as proof that help had a bank routing number. Jason started to speak, but then shut his mouth. The room became a live wire of small betrayals and larger explanations. I could see the thin film of shame forming on Mom's face, where humiliation and guilt fight to be the louder emotion. Mom's hand found mine across the table for a second. That brief contact was not absolution. It was a reminder that affection and exploitation often live on the same street. I unfurled the simple agreement I'd drafted. Not a legal ultimatum, just a plain paper that named amounts, dates, and my request. Clarity about whether these transfers had been intended as loans or gifts, plans for repayment if they were loans, and a request to address the co-borrower status. Sign if this reflects what you believe, I said. If you don't sign, that's okay too. But I need to move forward with protecting my finances, and that means I have to take certain steps. And then I did something that felt both terrifying and righteous. I opened my banking app and prepared to cancel the auto-pays I'd set up for their utilities and for their credit card. In my case, those auto-pays were linked to me because I'd been trying to make life easy for everyone. It was easier, until it wasn't. The advisor had told me to be deliberate. You can't be the family's operating system forever, he said. Auto-pays can be revised, joint accounts closed. But there are consequences. Expect fallout. I tapped edit on a utility autopay and paused. I could imagine their anger like a physical thing. Dad's voice in the kitchen, Jason's small, resentful smile, Mom's urgent apologies. Removing those autopays would be a form of boundary that would be felt immediately. It wasn't theatrical, it was administrative. It was a line in the sand. Before I hit delete, I said aloud, I'm going to stop the autopay for the mortgage contributions from my account. I'm going to close the joint account we have for groceries. I'm not your emergency fund anymore. The words landed. Someone made a sound like a sob or a laugh. I couldn't tell the difference. That's how tightly sorrow and relief are braided. I clicked cancel on an autopay. One quiet click. One administrative action that had the weight of a sentence in it. Mom's face folded inward. Dad's jaw tightened. Jason looked away, like a person who's just been asked to pay attention to a number he never wanted to see. "No, you can't do that," Dad said. "You can't just cut us off." There's always a gasp from the family institution when a member stops performing the role assigned to them. "We'll be homeless," Jason said, or maybe it was a sneer disguised as concern. "People like us don't get to collapse," Dad said. "Not in this town." He was painting a future of doom to shame me into compliance. I remained calm. "In my case," I said, "this is not punishment, it's protection. If the bank expects me to be a co-borrower, then I need information. If we can't agree on what's owed, we will pursue clarity through the right channels. I'm not here to make accusations. I'm here to untangle my finances from yours." Of course there was shouting. There was a litany of family grievances I had never heard because they had always arrived in text messages or in late-night phone calls, never in the presence of the ledger. "This is about the inheritance," Dad spat, the word inheritance like an accusation. It stung because it hit on the most tender point, the belief that I had been waiting for some future largesse, and that my exposure was greed dressed up as grievance. I told them the truth. I had been careful. I had saved. The inheritance, such as it was, had not been squandered by me. I had money set aside for retirement and for small luxuries. I had used savings from my salary to make these transfers because I believed in family. That didn't mean I deserved to be on the hook, legally or morally, for the rest of their decisions. Jason tried to turn it into a moral contest. "You act like you're the victim," he said. "But victims are not always the weakest people. Sometimes victims are the ones who finally decide to stop participating in their own erasure." When I pressed the advisor's call to live, his voice was quiet and procedural on the laptop screen propped in the corner. "This is what you asked me to clarify, Claire," he said. "Co-borrower status ties signatures to obligations. To remove a name, banks often require the remaining borrower to qualify on their own. They might request proof of income, updated statements. Sometimes the lender will offer a payment plan. Sometimes the route is to refinance. Laws and processes vary. This is one person's experience." He nodded, the screen reflecting dim light. His presence was like a neutral umpire. He offered process, not vengeance. He reminded us that paperwork is what protects people. The argument circularized. Dad accused me of weaponizing numbers. Mom's hands trembled when she picked up a pen. Jason fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. I could see the practical consequences settling on them like dust. If I stopped being their invisible finance team, they had to pay their bills another way. That's not my responsibility to solve. It's theirs to manage. There was one moment, an actual small human moment, when Mom folded the paper, slid it across to me, and whispered, "I didn't know it was this much." It came out like a confession and not an excuse. A look passed between her and Dad. Maybe surprise, maybe regret. I didn't rush to accept the pen. Acceptance felt premature, but I also didn't relish watching them crumble. There is a difference between enforcing boundaries and enjoying collapse. After the table cleared and voices retreated to the rooms that harbor private grief, I packed a small suitcase. I had arranged a one-bedroom not far from downtown 3 weeks earlier, quietly, with savings I'd been hiding, saving to simply live. Buying my own place felt like a modest, grown-up rebellion. I didn't buy anyone's house that day. I bought my exit. I left my parents' kitchen with a suitcase and a feeling I can only describe as disentanglement. It's not the same as victory. It's not a trophy. It's a necessary resizing of life. Outside, my Uber arrived and the city air smelled like rain and the diesel from a bus. My phone pinged. The ping was a social media notification. Dad had written something on Facebook, a post that painted a picture of an ungrateful daughter. It was terse and performative. Family is family, whether she remembers it or not. People I barely knew liked his post. Jason left a cryptic comment, "Hope you sleep well." I read the comments but didn't respond. The advisor had warned me to guard my reactions. Social media is a theater. Sometimes people like to perform anguish there instead of having messy conversations in person. I took a screenshot of the post anyway and saved it with the others. Evidence, I reminded myself. At the condo, I opened the blinds to let the gray winter light come in. My apartment was small, but mine, an act of self-respect that felt undramatic in the moment, but powerful in total. I sat on the floor with the folder. The house I had once thought may have been stolen from me was still occupied by my family. The headline phrase, "bought their house and gave them 24 hours to leave," had not been true that day. But I knew the arc of consequences had begun. That night, a bank letter arrived at my parents' address that they forwarded to me with a message that read, "We need to talk." The letter referenced review of accounts in light of recent payment changes. I felt a knot loosen in one place and tighten in another. The bank had its own rhythms. They were now aware of the disentanglement I had begun. That awareness would have effects I couldn't yet predict. I lay on the couch and thought of Mia and Logan asleep in the house I had helped keep afloat for years. I thought of Mom's apology when she touched my hand and the way Dad's face looked as if he'd been punched. I thought of Jason, of the endless slack he'd always expected, and of the small dignity that comes with saying no. When you stop being the person who absorbs everyone's emergencies, your life gets quieter, and sometimes crueler. People who relied on you feel exposed and lash out. They tell public stories that paint themselves as victims. They forget that a ledger can be traced back to receipts and bank statements. They forget that family was used as a verb to commandeer your resources. My phone pulsed again. Another notification. This time it was from a collection agency. A notice addressed to my parents, forwarded to me because I'd asked to be kept informed. It referenced an account that had been held jointly for years. Their payments had missed a cycle the week after I stopped the autopay. I stared at the letter and the little official font and felt the surreal hum of bureaucracy brush up against the personal. This is where I stop for now, and not because the drama's over. The confrontation had happened. The autopays were canceled. I had moved into my own place. But the threads of fallout, the bank reviews, the social media smears, the legal possibilities, were just beginning to knot. In the next days, the family would respond in ways small and large. People would make decisions because of one quiet administrative click. Some would repair, some would double down. Some would post long, wounded manifestos about loyalty while ignoring the receipts. If you want the full breakdown of how I did all of this, the spreadsheet, the messages, the advisor's exact phrasing about what co-borrower meant in my case, hit subscribe and stick around. I'll walk through the numbers in detail, show the documents, redacted of course, and explain the choices I made when disentanglement became the only ethical option left. Right now, I want you to picture that kitchen table, the spreadsheet, the canceled resort confirmation, the co-borrower email, the paper agreement half-signed and heavy with possibility. I want you to sit with that image because it's not only about money. It's about what we owe ourselves and what we owe each other, when systems of family begin to function like systems of dependency. I did not want to hurt my family. I wanted to stop hurting myself. The rest of the story is complicated. There are bank letters, a public smear, and the slow, humiliating unspooling of assumptions everyone around the table had been making for years. There's also a quieter thread. Mom alone at her kitchen table, counting the tiles with a wrist that used to hold my head when I was small. There's Jason, unexpectedly opening a textbook and taking a night shift. There's the advisor who tells me repeatedly that laws vary and that I should never think of this as a one-size-fits-all playbook. I keep the folder under my bed. At night, I sometimes pull it out and run my fingers over the paper like a steward counting coins. The numbers don't warm, they clarify. They give shape to decisions that felt amorphous when they were only feelings. If you have ever been the family's secret ATM, if you have ever felt like kindness was the only currency you had to trade, you know the relief and the terrible loneliness of choosing yourself. The phone buzzes again, a flood of messages, some kind, some accusatory. One is from Mom, a tiny photo of Mia and Logan smiling with their cheeks chubby from a holiday cookie. A note reads simply, "We'll talk." I stare at the photo for a long time. I don't answer immediately. I wait, because I have learned that answers formed in the heat of defense are rarely the ones that build anything durable. There's more to tell. There will be bank calls, a murky negotiation about the mortgage, and yes, Events that make the headline feel less like fiction and more like a stretched truth. I will explain the legal options my advisor mentioned. The one-off purchase of a property at auction some people use when houses are foreclosed, and why I ultimately didn't want the sight of my family's loss to be my victory. But the point I want to leave you with tonight is this. Boundaries are not hate. They are survival. They look like paperwork sometimes, and they sound like silence at other times. They will make people angry. They will make people sad. They may make you lonely. And they may also buy you the space to finally live on your own terms. There's more to tell. And it didn't tidy itself up in a neat legal envelope. The bank letters multiplied. A different envelope came every few days. A final notice typed in sans serif that made my stomach open and close like a fist. A polite-sounding account review from someone in a branch 3 states away. A terse call from a collections rep who asked for the responsible party. Each one landed like a pebble in a pond I was still learning how to navigate. The first weekend after I moved, I met with an attorney the advisor recommended. He had a low, steady voice and a preference for post-it notes. We sat across from each other in a windowed office and he drew a triangle on a legal pad. Lender, co-borrower, borrower. There's exposure here, he said. But exposure isn't inevitability. Your name being on that mortgage gives you standing to demand information. You can request accounting. You can ask the lender to clarify who made payments and when. If they moved forward with foreclosure without proper notice, that's a different problem. If they've already initiated action because of missed payments, there are procedural steps, and in some places banks are required to attempt contact with all named borrowers. I asked the question I'd been turning over in my head like a coin. Can I buy the property? It sounded performative as soon as I said it, a revenge fantasy dressed up as fiscal strategy. In some cases, yes, he said. Banks sell repossessed homes at auction. Sometimes homeowners default, the lender forecloses, the house goes to auction, and in theory, anyone with the funds can bid. There are also shorter paths. You can negotiate to purchase the mortgage note or buy the property from the lender before a sale. But this isn't a one-size answer, and it's not automatic. You need to factor in timelines, taxes, outstanding liens, and the practical reality that purchasing a house you once helped support is legally and emotionally complicated. He wasn't selling drama, he was selling process. And process means paperwork, waiting, and decisions that often feel like small violences to everyone involved. Over the next 2 weeks, the bank's pressure curve rose. A notice about a missed mortgage payment arrived at my parents' house on a Thursday and was forwarded to me with a terse, "You did this." The tone in the house shifted the way wind shifts a loose stack of papers. There was fear, yes. But there was also anger, aimed at me for breaking the system they'd relied on, at the bank for sending letters that made the possibility of losing a roof feel immediate, and at whatever private equilibrium had allowed chronic mismanagement to pass as normal. On a Saturday morning, Jason's truck was gone. He'd left for a night shift at a warehouse and returned to find a towing notice under his windshield. His sigh was a long exhale. "I don't even know where I parked it," he said, which was more accurate than you might think. There were liens on the truck because payments had been late. I felt the shame of that moment like a physical heat. These were not just numbers on a spreadsheet anymore. They were a person's commute, a child's bed, a neighbor's awareness. I sat across from Mom in a diner and watched her peel a rolled bill like it was a bar of soap. She told me in that low, small voice people use when they're trying to preserve dignity that she had never imagined I'd actually stop. "We thought you'd always be the one," she said. "We thought you wanted it." That was the cultural lie I had been raised with. A daughter's care is her vocation, not a choice. My quiet refusal had collapsed that myth in the span of a week. I kept buying time with a practical focus. I called the lender and asked for an account history. I asked what steps needed to be taken to remove my name as a co-borrower. Their response was a rehearsed, neutral script. "We cannot discuss account details without authorization. You must be listed as an authorized party." The desk clerk read company policy as if it were scripture. The attorney explained that my path was to request specific documents and to be prepared for the possibility that the lender would require either full repayment or a refinance by the remaining borrower. If the remaining borrower couldn't qualify, the lender might accelerate the loan, meaning move toward foreclosure. When the first foreclosure notice hit the mailbox, time stopped in a new way. Foreclosure paperwork is designed to be both bureaucratic and brutal. A timeline, a list of breaches, and a calm invitation to cure. It was as if the institution had taken the private argument and formalized it on paper. The letter meant they were starting a process that would, if left unattended, lead to the house being sold to pay the debt. I had two options, ethically and practically. I could stand aside and let the process run its course, which risked strangers owning my parents' home and possibly uprooting the kids. Or I could try to keep the property in the family's control, which meant complicated financial moves that might look like the thing the headline promised. The advisor and attorney's quiet counsel pushed me toward a single guiding principle: preserve the children's stability and protect my own credit while minimizing harm where possible. I did something people call decisive and others call cold. I prepared to bid at a trustee sale. Trustee sales are public auctions that banks use to liquidate homes after foreclosure. You show up with cash or certified funds, and the property, often with back taxes and liens attached, is sold to the highest bidder. It sounded like something out of a movie. In reality, it's fluorescent-lit gymnasiums and folding chairs and lawyers in sensible shoes. Before crossing that line, I called Mom and Jason separately. I told them plainly what I was considering. "I don't want to be the person who profits from your loss," I said. "If the house goes to auction and a stranger buys it, that could be worse for Mia and Logan. If I can secure it and then sign a lease agreement that gives the kids stability, or work on a plan to transition them gently, that might be less damaging. I'm telling you because I don't want anyone blindsided." The word gently felt absurd in that context, but it was the adjective I kept returning to, the olive branch of intent. Mom cried. Jason swore and then was silent. I told them I would not do anything without attempting negotiation first. There was a short window between the notice and the sale. The lender sometimes accepted repayment or negotiated a sale to a willing buyer. I called the bank's asset recovery department and asked if it would be interested in selling the property outright before auction. The voice on the other end was polite and non-committal. "We evaluate offers," the person said. "We'll need documentation and a timeline." What I didn't advertise was that I had been quietly lining up funds, not to punish but to protect. The condo deposit had been a tent pole in a long-term plan. I had access to liquid savings and a small conservative line of credit in case of emergency. The advisor had cautioned me. Tapping those funds to buy a property tied me emotionally to an asset that had once been my family's, but now might feel like a trophy of pain. "Ask yourself what you want this to look like in 5 years," he said. "If your goal is to preserve a home for children, make that the shape of your purchase. If your goal is revenge, don't be surprised when the rest of your life includes that cost." I drew up an offer to the bank and a parallel plan for the auction day. I explained to my attorney that if the bank rejected a sale, I would attend the trustee sale and bid up to a pre-agreed cap. He wrote the cap on a Post-it. He underlined the words, "Do no harm," like a litmus test. The bank called back within 48 hours. They were interested in a direct sale, but only under terms that cleared some of the outstanding obligations and covered administrative fees. That's where the moral and the financial knotted together. To buy the property, I would need to account for unpaid mortgage portions, late fees, and any junior liens. The number rose in a way that made my hands shake when I did the arithmetic. Was it worth it to me to cover those sums? Could I justify spending my savings to secure a house that belonged to people who had treated me as a line item? I slept badly and then better. In the morning, I set the figure and told the attorney to move forward with a formal offer, contingent on a title search and a short settlement window. I also told Mom and Jason that if the bank accepted, there would have to be a transition plan. "I'm not buying you out of family," I said. "I'm buying you a timeline." The bank accepted. There are paragraphs of paperwork I will never reread because they smell like compromise, indemnities, acknowledgement of liens, and a clause that required me to sign something like a promise not to use the purchase as a weapon. The lender wanted a clean break from the scenario of a defaulted loan on their books. They wanted to move an asset to someone who could clear its liabilities. On paper, it was clinical. In practice, it felt like walking through rooms of my childhood and paying entry fees for each memory. On closing day, the bank wired instructions and we signed forms in an office that smelled faintly of coffee and legal pad glue. The title company ran a search and found an old home equity line in the 90s with a tiny balance and an unpaid municipal charge that someone had never noticed. We paid for clear title. We paid for the right to own. When the sale finalized, I became the legal owner of the house where I had grown up, the house that had been both cradle and ledger. The truth of that sentence sits heavy. I had, in the end, purchased the property. But I did not want the purchase to be framed as a theatrical eviction. I did not see myself as arriving with a posse and crowbar, trophy in hand. I saw myself holding a complex burden of responsibility. The children's stability, my credit's freedom, and the moral cost of owning a home that had been my parents' life. The morning after closing, I sat at my laptop and worked out a transition plan. I sent an email to Mom and Dad outlining a timetable and options, a 90-day relocation plan with assistance for moving costs, and a suggestion of short-term rental options for Jason while he stabilized his employment, an offer to let Mia and Logan stay on a month-to-month lease at below-market rent if school stability required it, and a proposal that included a requirement for them to document a plan to address the arrears that had led to the sale. I used plain language. I used numbered bullets. I kept my tone measured because I had learned that measured tones land more reliably than righteous ones. When the email went out, the responses were feral. Dad's post on Facebook became longer and angrier, and someone used the phrase, "house stolen," in a way that would make a headline writer smile. People sent my parents messages of condolence as if they had been robbed. Jason texted me a stream of capital letters and then a request that I not change the locks because we have stuff in there. Mom called, and weeping turned her sentences into fragments. You didn't have to do it this way. I set a meeting at the kitchen table again, the same table I had left with my suitcase. This time the house felt different. The air held the knowledge of paperwork and signatures. I brought a printed copy of the plan and the title paperwork. I sat opposite them like someone who knows both the math and the tenderness required. I bought the house, I said. The sentence landed between us with more gravity than I expected. I did not do this to punish you. I did it because there was a real path, a legal way, to keep the property from being purchased by an outside buyer, and to make sure Mia and Logan would not be moved in the middle of a school year. I will give you time to remove your things and find a place. I'm offering 90 days and some financial help to make that possible. They stared. Dad's face was a map of outrage and baffled pride. Mom's mouth was a small black hole of grief. Jason looked like someone who had been offered medicine he didn't think he deserved. There was a heavy silence, then a single, simple question from Dad. Why didn't you give us a heads up? It was grudgingly fair. I did give you a heads up, I said. I told you I was going to pursue options. You had the notice from the bank. I asked for clarity at the table. This is the result of the failure to reach that clarity. I didn't want to leave you without a roof. I wanted to keep that roof in family control while we made a plan. I could see that the factual explanation didn't soothe everything. For Dad, the sense of betrayal lived in a place where influence and control had been his tools. For Jason, it was shame. For Mom, it was bewilderment, and beneath it, something like relief that someone was finally fixing what she couldn't manage. That night, after the meeting, I drafted a formal notice document that aligned with local regulations for a notice to quit tied to a change of ownership and my offer of assistance. I did not give them 24 hours to leave. I refused to perform the sensational image the headline promised. Instead, I offered a structured transition, and I explained that, had the bank sold the property at auction to a third party, that buyer might have different expectations, and it could have led to a harsher timeline. The 90-day agreement was a conscious mitigation, longer than dramatic and shorter than infinitely patient. But there was another piece of theater I allowed to exist, because headline truth and lived truth sometimes share a border. I quietly arranged a period in which the house would be closed to visitors while the bank's change of ownership paperwork processed. The title company recommended it to minimize risk while the transfer recorded. That closure lasted roughly 24 hours. During that day, the house felt both empty and charged, a museum of small things and a continuing claim on belonging. People in the neighborhood asked each other questions. The kids went to school. Neighbors brought casseroles because that is what neighbors do. Dad reacted about as predicted. He painted the scene publicly as me, kicking the family out in a day. He used social media to argue a moral thesis I didn't recognize. Some friends called to ask if I was okay. Others unfriended me or sent scathing messages. The smear campaign had two currents to it, an appeal to sentiment and a twisting of the facts. I saved screenshots, as always. I did not reply publicly. The advisor had reminded me that public debates rarely solve private problems. What followed was the slow, grating work of transition. Jason found a night shift and took it, more out of the blunt need for money than any sudden conversion to responsibility. He texted me photos of a mattress he'd bought and a receipt for utilities in his name. The receipts were small, human coronations. Mom cried, then accepted a small check I offered. Not a bribe, but a seed for the deposit she needed for a one-bedroom. She hugged me in a way that was both apology and reproach. Dad tried to be theatrical and then retreated into silence. I blocked him on social media because I wouldn't watch my private life reframed into a public script meant to shame me. One evening, 2 months after the purchase, Mom sat on my couch with a cup of tea and a hand-knit blanket that smelled faintly of lavender. She put the blanket around me, which is something she used to do when I was a child after nightmares. "I am sorry," she said, the words small and true. I didn't know how to be anything other than what I was taught. She pressed her forehead to mine for a moment, then rose and left a small envelope on my kitchen island. Inside was a check, not the entirety of the sums she owed, but an offering. "Start over," the note read simply. I did not accept the check with fanfare. I accepted it because it mattered symbolically. I also kept a ledger of it. There is nothing glamorous about letting someone pay you back. It is accounting and sometimes awkward grace. In time, Jason's hours steadied. He took down social posts that painted me as a villain and replaced them with small, mundane updates about overtime shifts and cheaper rent. He found a secondhand couch and a job at a place that offered benefits. It wasn't redemption so much as the dull fact of consequence. He learned to call when he was going to be late and to fill out a form at the clinic without asking me to do it for him. Dad and I never had a full reconciliation. He called once and left a rambling voicemail that alternated between concession and accusation. I blocked his number for a while and then unblocked it at Mom's request. We are currently, as I narrate this, engaged in what might as well be called a civil detente. Polite texts about holidays, no shared finances, and a firm boundary on money talk. People ask whether I feel savage for buying the house. The short answer is no. The long answer is complicated and messy and true. I bought the house in a specific legal context to prevent a stranger from displacing kids mid-school year. I offered a timetable and help. I did not want to profit from my family's hardship. I did want accountability and an end to being used as a financial shock absorber. If you read that as buy, evict, chore, gloat, you are missing the cost. Owning that house means I now have a mortgage paper to pay and maintenance calls to schedule. It means I am legally responsible for a space filled with memories and obligations. The title transfer put a different kind of weight on my shoulders. Not lighter, not simpler, just mine. It meant I had essentially internalized some of the mess that had been outsourced to me for years, but in a way that allowed me to control the cadence of the fallout. There were consequences I hadn't predicted. Some friends leaned away, uncertain how to be in relation to a family drama that felt very public. Other friends leaned in harder, bringing soup and offering small, practical acts that looked like love. I learned who could sit with complicated truth and who needed clear emotional narratives. That knowledge has been both sad and clarifying. I also learned the true value of documentation. The spreadsheet that had first felt like armor became the backbone of everything. The timeline, the proofs, the receipts. Without those inked numbers, my position would have been interpreted as grievance rather than accounting. Evidence doesn't take the sting out of betrayal, but it makes a conversation possible that otherwise would be built out of feelings and recollections that prefer to be myths. A truth I cannot avoid. Owning that house for me was never about spectacle. The headline would make it appear so. Bought their house and gave them 24 hours to leave. But that's shorthand for a chain of events that involved court notices, negotiations, title searches, and long draft emails. If you want literal truth, the most accurate version is this. I legally acquired the property through negotiation with the lender in order to preserve stability for the children. I then offered a structured transition and assistance. I issued proper notices consistent with ownership and local law. I did not participate in illegal or forceful eviction. I did, however, insist on boundaries and timelines. If parts of this read like revenge, consider the reverse. I had been unpaid, unasked for, and legally tied to obligations I didn't consent to. Boundaries sometimes appear harsh when they collide with long-standing dependence. There was healing, too. Not cinematic reconciliation, but small mends. Mom came to a school concert and stood at the back, grateful and small. She apologized in public for the way she had framed things online. Jason stopped blaming me for the most immediate crises and began to pay some debts down. He still texts me the occasional dumb meme, but now he also texts receipts. The children, Mia and Logan, are where the story has the most literal moral. They kept their routine. In the months after the purchase, I signed a month-to-month lease for the two of them and arranged to pay for a short tutoring program at school to reduce stress. This wasn't because I felt legally obligated. It was because I didn't want to be the person who grew wealthy off my family's misfortune while their kids suffered. I wanted to offer them stability and a ladder out of acute disruption. People frequently ask what I would do differently. I have a list. I would have set firmer boundaries sooner, not as a tantrum, but as a practical policy. I would have kept joint accounts to a minimum and insisted on written agreements for any large transfers. I would have engaged legal counsel earlier as a preventive measure, not as a last resort. I would have kept my savings in a form that wouldn't require liquidation under emotional pressure. All of those things are mundane but radical. They protect you from being eaten alive by generosity misapplied. If you're watching this and you're part of a pattern, the person whose phone becomes the family ledger, the card that seems to pay for other people's normal. My message is simple and ugly and honest. You can say no. Saying no will make people angry, and it will hurt people who did not intend to hurt you. It will also save you from quiet bankruptcy of spirit. There's no magic in my story, no righteous deus ex machina. There was documentation, counsel, and a decision to prioritize my financial health and the children's stability over the myth of unconditional access to my resources. If your head is running through potential how-to steps right now, stop. Laws and banks and local rules differ. This is my story, not a how-to video. If you are entangled with a mortgage or joint accounts, consult a professional. An advisor will help you interpret your statements. An attorney will help you parse local law. That's boring and necessary and life-saving. I keep the file under my bed. The spreadsheet still sits there, pages dog-eared, with a post-it on the top that reads, "Protect without punishing." That note is my moral center in this story. It's why, when I signed the closing documents, I thought of Mia and Logan instead of the headline I knew would be written. It's why, after the purchase, I offered 90 days and moving help, rather than a crude instant eviction. It's also why I blocked my father on social media and kept the legal documents readily available. There's an irony here. In the moment I stopped being the family's default ATM, I became, in the eyes of some, the villain. In the real arithmetic of life, I became the person who could at least control the sequence of harm. That control felt less like victory and more like ownership of consequences. I own the consequences now, and I am still learning how to live with them. So if you clicked for the headline and you're still here, know this. There was no midnight tow truck spectacle. There was a lot of legal paperwork, a bank who preferred pragmatism to scandal, an auction strategy that didn't unfold because I negotiated first, and a long, awkward transition that required me to be both firm and generous in different measures. I bought the property in a legal, deliberate move designed to keep the kids safe and to end a pattern that had been quietly eroding me for years. I gave them time and help to leave because I didn't want it to be about triumph. I wanted it to be about safety and closure. If anything in my story resonates, your exhaustion, your ledger, that hollowed-out kindness, tell me in the comments one boundary you set this year. If you want the deeper walkthrough, the redacted spreadsheet, the advisor's phrasing, and the way the trustee sale process really feels, like and subscribe. I'll post that walkthrough with documents redacted to protect privacy and context. Boundaries aren't glamour. They aren't revenge. They're the practical work of keeping a life intact. Say no when you need to. Keep your receipts. Make safe plans for the people you love, and for yourself. If you leave this with one takeaway, let it be this. Protecting your future may look like a small administrative action today, and small actions, over time, are how you reclaim your life. And now I'll ask the last question I asked myself before I booked my one-way ticket back home for the final meeting. Would I do it again? For now, my answer is yes, with more patience, better documentation, and far less theater. The cost was high. The relief was real. The house sits on my name in public record, but in the private ledger of my life, it bought me something I could not otherwise afford: the space to say no. If that sounds cold, remember this. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a family is stop doing the thing that is quietly killing you. If this hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear that saying no is allowed. And tell us one boundary you set this year.